Hey there guys, Andrew with A-Team Adventures. Welcome back. Really glad to have you. You know, I was walking a friend through what I do to uh, spool my. I took that side plate off, and I'll show you why in a minute. But spool my reel up with line. I was walking him through it, and I thought, you know what? If he was that curious about it, maybe others are as well. So hopefully this is helpful to you. But I'll just walk you through what I do, spooling up a line. And all right, let's dig right into it. So first I'm gonna remove the side plate. I've already kind of got it halfway undone, as you saw. But I'm gonna remove that. I'm gonna pull the spool out. And I like to put something, I guess there's multiple ways to get to the same thing, but what I want is that my line does not slip on my spool. So if for some reason I had a really big fish, I don't want that line to spin on my spool, and I always back everything with braid. I've got, what I back it with is sort of a cheap braid, you know, something. I usually go with a, larger strength braid. So this is like, I think this is 65-pound braid, 50, 65, something like that. So I don't have to use a whole lot of it is the reason I do that. But I can back my spool with it. And I just go with something cheap. You know, I'm not going for the best thing in the world. And then what I'm putting on this one, you can, connect to anything you want. But what I happen to be putting on here is braid as well. It's a 65-pound braid. I'll usually frog with this. I'll flip vegetation with it. I'll even, if I sometimes am using a buzz bait, I'll use the same rod sometimes for a buzz bait, and then I like using braid to that. It floats, and I can, the fish don't see it when I'm moving a bait that fast typically. And this braid, I like this braid. I'll go with all kinds of different braids, but I like something that's got more weaves in it, something that's a little slicker. So this braid doesn't have a lot of weaves in it, so I'm going to use that as backing, but this one has a lot more. It's an 832, and I'll use also like a Power Pro Super Slick. I'll use anything like that that's got a lot of weaves in it. This one I like okay. It tends to lose its color pretty fast, but I do like it. So then I'll often take a large, and I don't know if I've got one floating around. Maybe I do right here. This is probably missing some of the video here, but I don't know. I'm sure I have one floating around here in the boat somewhere. But I'll take a large Sharpie, and I'll like a really big one, one of the large ones, and I'll just take my knife and I'll cut a couple slots in the tip of it, and then I'll stick the braid into it and run it up the line maybe 10, 12 feet, and redarken the line, because this has a tendency to kind of go white, and then I do think the fish see it. And again, maybe it's not a big deal, but mentally to me it makes a difference, and so therefore I do it, and it makes a difference, whether it really does or it doesn't. The placebo effect. But anyway, so let's do that. So first I'm going to take my spool right here, and I want the line not to slip. So I always use braid to back it, and it has the chance of slipping, and it probably would not slip. You could catch 1,000 fish on it and it would probably never slip, but if you caught that truly giant fish, well, that's when it would slip, because you're putting a lot of extra pressure on it, and that's exactly the time that you don't want it to slip. If you lost a 2-pound bass because your spool slipped, sort of who cares in most instances. But if you caught something really large, well, yeah, that's when you want everything to be just perfect. So in some of the reels, in this one, the spools, it's got holes in it, and you can see that in that spool there's little holes. And so you can achieve that, non-slipping by weaving that line through the spool. Kind of a pain to me, so I don't usually do that. I'll use, something like, I've used all kinds of stuff, but you're wanting something where the line can really bite into it and grip. And so I've used, this is like surgical tape. I use it like when I'm on a chin-up bar or something, just to give my hands a little grip when I'm sweaty. But I've taken this, and I've got a piece right here, but I've ripped it down, and I wind that on it. I've used electrical tape. If I have it, that's probably my preferred thing to use, but I'll use just something like that. So I've got a piece right here, and but I've used a few things. It's just the idea is giving it some sort of something to bite into. I like the electrical tape. Just again, I'm probably never going to see it, but it's darker. So again, I'm funny that way. But so I tend to use it if I have it. But if I don't, it's not like I'm going to be afraid to use something else. I really don't care that much. Okay, so number one, we've got something in there to keep it from slipping. Again, you could weave it through the holes, and that's perfectly perfect. I've got my braid here on the floor, and we're going to, when doing this, I find it easier to take the spool out to start it. But the key thing to remember is you've got to fish it through here first, through your reel, okay? And remember, the spool's going back in through the side plate, so we're going to stick it through the side plate. Yes, if you're wondering, I have tied it to the spool without fishing it through. Really stupid thing to do. But anyway, so you're going to do that, and then I try to remember which way. I like to wrap it around the spool multiple times, and you want to try to remember. I know that my spool is going to be wrapping it this way, so I've intentionally wrapped it the same way that when I start reeling, I'm not going the opposite direction. I'm going the right direction. For the way my spool is reeling. So just, it's something I think it probably makes a little tighter connection, but I wrap it around it a few times just because, again, I think it helps not to slip. It helps it not slip. And then I'm just going to tie a knot. I don't tie any fancy knot. I just tie sort of, your regular old granny knot. And I make it as tight as I can, but it'll kind of loosen up, but you can usually pinch it down afterward. And I'm just going to tie that knot, and I usually go, and then this is where sometimes it's a little loose on that spool, but usually you can kind of pinch that knot down and really cinch it down on there, and then I'll usually just put one more knot in it for extra good measure. Again, the last thing I'd want is for this to pop free. Again, most likely you'd never get down to this small part of your spool, but if you did, I wouldn't really want it to pop free if I could help it. So I do the best I can, and then I just cut just like I would on anything else, most of the tag end off. I'm going to fish this back through, reinsert the spool rather, in the reel, and then I had the drag reel loose because I was stripping the line off earlier. And then I'm going to, as reasonably tight as I can, and I'll show you here, I'm in my bare feet, and I'll show you why. You can use anything. I've got, I'm kind of into archery here. I'm going to pick this up and just show you what I mean. But I've got the spool through an arrow. You could use a dowel. You could use anything that fits through there. But the reason I'm doing that is so this way with my feet, I can put it through my feet and put a little pressure down on the spool, because when I reel this, I want as much tension as I can on this spool so it tightens it up reasonably tight. So I'm going to put this back so I can put tension on it now that you're all dizzy and seasick from me moving the camera on you. I'm gonna put as much tension as I reasonably can with my feet and wind this up. And you can watch it on the spool. I want to make sure it loads evenly. If for some reason it's loading more on one side, I'll kind of tip it so it wants to naturally fall on this side. If it's not, I'll go straight at it. But if for some reason I'm watching it and it's not really loading right, then I'll make some changes. So this is the backing, so I'm not really going to put a whole lot of that on there because what I'm going to is 65-pound braid as well. So if I want to make a long cast, well, I need a lot of space because that 65-pound braid takes up a lot of space. Now, if I was loading, 30-pound braid, 20-pound braid, or a 12-pound mono, I could fill the spool up a little bit more. But in this case, because I want to be able to make a real good cast with 65-pound braid, still. I want to leave. I don't want to load the spool up too heavy. So then I'm going to cut it, and we'll put a connection knot in. And I've done a video on this, so I'll walk you through what I'm doing, but I'm not going to spend too much time showing you the connection knot. So this is a brand new spool of this. Don't use your teeth. Okay. Here we go. All right. So I'm just laying them crisscrossed on itself. This one's on the back. This is the backing, and this is my new line. And we're going to wrap it around. I'm going 8 times with this. And we're going to lay it in this V, pinch the lines, and go back over, and 8 times with this. Okay. Stick it back through. We've kind of created a hole where the one line came through already. We pinched it, but now we've created kind of a hole. We stick it back through the same hole. And I'm going to start drawing it down, and I'm going to wet it. Start cinching it down. And I'm just sort of watching this knot as I do to make sure that the loops lay flat. So hopefully they don't bunch up too much. This one's bunching up just a little bit, but should be okay. Yep, that's going to be okay. And then I'm just cinching it down real good. I put a little pressure on those tag ends, but you don't need to put much. But I'm going to cinch it down real good. Looks good, and here's why it looks good. You got both tag ends. Here's my backing, here's my new line, and they're on total opposite sides. If they were together, they were coming out sort of the same side, up, both up here or something, I would know that I did the knot wrong, and I just retie it until I got it right. But I know I got this one right, so I'm going to trim these back. Okay. And I'm not super worried about these because they are braid. And again, hopefully I'm never going to cast past this knot. But when they're braid, I don't feel like I need to trim them super close just because they fold and they give and they fray out just a little bit. Not a big deal. And now we're going to swap out this spool. And something, you probably saw it in the video, but I do purposefully put the spool up so you could run the line underneath. But then you're fighting how the line naturally wants to curl and bow. It's naturally already curled this way, and it's going to go on the spool this way. So I'm just going to match it up and run it the same exact way. And I've also, you had seen, I've got a towel in the bottom of my boat. I only do that just because when I'm running a bunch of line, it puts a little bit of groove, and I've got it in the carpet of my boat. I'm really not looking to put a groove in the carpet, of my boat. So I've just put a towel down. And now again, I'm just loading this up. Watching that it's even. It's a little sticking to kind of one side, so I'm going to slant it. Yeah, it's a little bit to one side, but that's okay. Okay, that's a little too full here. I just overdid it just a little bit. So I'm going to strip a little bit off, and that's it. Nothing to it. And again, I'm going braid to braid, but often I'm going braid to fluorocarbon, braid to something else, but typically it's fluorocarbon. Every once in a while I'll use braid when I'm flipping in grass, when I'm running a top water, when I'm, I don't know, running a frog for sure, I will use braid, and I use 65-pound braid when I'm flipping and frogging. If you're frogging in open water, you can scale it down to 50, and you'll probably get a little longer cast. Or if you're running a buzzbait, 50 is more than adequate. I sometimes, if I've got a reel that I've been using it for other things, I'll just leave the 65-pound on there. It's overkill, yes, but I don't care enough to strip it off and put a different kind of braid on. Sometimes if I'm running top water, I'll put a mono leader, like a walking bait. I'll put a mono leader. It tends not to get fetched up in the hooks as much. Braid is obviously very, very bendable, where mono stays a little stiffer. So if you're walking a bait, the mono is sometimes easier. If you're walking, you'll walk over the bait with your hook and kind of foul it up. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen enough that sometimes it's easier to put a little mono on, and it gives a little stretch for those treble hooks. But for other things that aren't treble hooked, I'll just leave it straight to braid typically. Some people probably feel differently than I do about it, but that's what I'll typically do. All right, guys. Well, hopefully that helps. Just walking you through what I do to spool up a reel. And again, I use that same connection knot. I'm using braid to braid this time, but I'd use it braid to fluorocarbon, braid to mono, whatever it is. I'm going to use that same connection knot. All right, take care, guys.